Traders, welcome back to the channel. So in this video, I'm going to be going over the 5-minute ORB, so the opening range breakout. So this is a trade which I didn't actually catch, so 4th of November, but this was a 5-minute orb, and we're going to be going through how you can catch this trade, why this level was a good level, and why you wanted to target this level. So I just trade from one level to the next, right? So you can do this in probably 3 simple steps if you understand how to use order flow with the opening range breakout. So let's take a step back. What do we want to look for in terms of our pre-market plan, right? So if we just take a look at our pre-market plan, it looks something like this. So the whole of the opening range breakout, if I just make this a little bit zoomed in for people to understand, the whole of the opening range breakout comes down to 3 simple steps. You need one fair value gap. You then need to know where to trade from. So you need to wait for an entry inside the fair value gap, and then you're using order flow, right? And so the order flow is where the orb comes in, right? So if you're trading orb, you need order flow to confirm that setup. So this is how we do it, right? So this is what we do, right? So I get questions about how I form my key level. So this is basically how I do it. Let's kind of zoom into this. Now, this candle, this candle, this candle, this is a three-step candle, right? So this is the candles low, and this is the candles high over here. This is a fair value gap. I think most traders would understand that. Now, what we want to do is we want to get this candle and mark it out like this, right? So this is the candle like this. So this is my key level. My key level is different to the fair value gap. The fair value gap is here. The key level is the candle before the fair value gap, or the start of the fair value gap, right? It's that simple. So now we just drag this over to the right. So why is this a key level, and what are we looking for specifically? Just a couple of things about this. What we have is, what makes this a good key level is that this is the daily opening price. We're below the daily opening price. Now, quick tip on this, right? If you trade ICT or you trade the AMD, what you're looking for is you want to enter when the wick is short, and you want to basically get in and you want to get out when the wick is long, right? So you want to trade, you want to position yourself inside of a wick. So the best traders know when to get in based off when the wick is short, and you want to kind of be in the trade while the wick is expanding. You don't want to get in when the body is this size, right? You want to get in when the wick is small and ride the wick, right? That's basically the whole logic behind trading, no matter what strategy you use. But if we just kind of dive in, so this video I wanted to make is specifically on the orb. So how do I use the orb in my trading? So let's clear that up. So opening range breakout, it's a very time specific strategy, right? So it's the first 5 minutes. The first 5 minutes, there's one simple rule, you have to follow it. You don't trade the first 5 minutes. So the first 5 minutes looks something like this, right? So this is 9:30, 9:31, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's the first 5 minutes over here. So you just draw a yellow box like this. This is the orb. This is the first 5 minutes. This is that opening range breakout that you're going to be looking for. And you just draw a line like this. This is the range high. This is the range low. So now what makes this a good orb strategy, or what makes this a good A+ setup for me is this. Once we tap into the level and the range, we can either break to the downside or break to the upside. It's that simple. So what I'm looking for is I want to see a break from basically one of these 2 lines. So if we just kind of play price on a little bit, this is what we end up getting. So there you go. That's what we're looking for right here. This is what we're looking for. Now, how do we validate if our orb setup is correct? So this is where we use our footprint charts. So just to kind of break this down, this is what I was looking for. So now this is something I broadcast live. So this is about 14:45, so 9:45 EST. This is what we're looking for. So this is the first 5 minutes, and I want you to draw a box, and I want you to have 2 lines over here. So we're looking for a breakout. But why is it that some orb strategies, they work, and then some they don't work? Now, in order for you to understand orb, it's very difficult for you to trade the opening range breakout without understanding buyers and sellers. You need to know what's going on here, basically, and you need to know what's going on here. You need to know what's going on inside of your range or your level. So in this case, I'm going to focus on that 5 minute range. So it's this it's this price action here. It's the first 5, maybe 6, 7 minutes. So let's break it down, right? So what we can see here is this. So we can see a lot of heavy selling, right? In that first kind of 9:33, 4, 5, right? A lot of aggressive selling, heavy selling. Now, when we have a lot of aggressive sellers like this, you want to ask yourself, aggressive sellers hit the bid, right? So the bid is bigger than the ask. And that's why we see a lot of red delta. So when you see red delta inside of these candles, it just means that there's a ton of aggressive sellers. Now, if there's a ton of aggressive sellers, you want to ask yourself, okay, aggressive sellers, are they going to be successful? So in the first 5 minutes, you don't know, because the whole point of the opening range breakout is to wait for the opening range and then trade in line with whether you break above or below. Now, how do you make sure you're on the right side of that break? So if we're going to break bullish, how do you know we're going to break bullish, right? So the way we want to break bullish is by seeing buyers in control. So this is the mindset shift I want everyone to go through. What you want to focus on as an opening range breakout trader is, instead of thinking about which direction do I want to trade, you basically want to see who is in control. Who is in control? So instead of thinking which direction does the break happen, you want to ask yourself, who is in control? Is it buyers or is it sellers, right? So buyers or sellers. So this is how an orb, if I spell that right, this is how an orb basically works. So an orb, or an opening range breakout, will work like this. So you see the high, you see the low. Who is in control? Is it the buyers? Is it the sellers? Now, this is where the footprint charts do help us, because in the first 5 minutes, we see a ton of selling here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We see a lot of selling. In fact, this is probably 7 minutes of heavy aggressive selling. So from here, now ask yourself a question. If we break above the 5 minute range, were these sellers successful? These sellers down here, right? Think about that. Now, if we come here and we start to crash down and we break below, were these sellers successful? So this is the mindset shift. You're not trying to predict the break. I see too many traders trying to predict the break and not actually reading the price action. So if you read the price action, you wouldn't need to predict and get it wrong, because you would only do what the market tells you to do, right? So the market leaves clues, and our job is to just read those clues. And you won't always get that reading correct, but it's a difference between reading and predicting. You can't predict anything. Your job isn't to predict. You plan, you react, and you execute. In fact, I'm going to write that down. You don't predict, right? You don't predict. Predicting is not real, right? It's not viable. You're not going to know what happens here. You're not going to know what happens here. You have no idea what's happening here. Wrong. You don't predict anything. In fact, what you do is you plan. So that's the pre-market plan that you look for. So you plan, you have your level, you're below the daily opening price, you're below the weekly opening price, right? You plan, you switch on the ATAS platform, you look to see what's going on inside of the opening range breakout, the first 5 minutes. Now, once you've done that, right, you plan, you react, right? So what do I mean by that? You plan, you react. You plan, you react, you execute, right? You plan, you react, you execute. Now, your execution needs to be pretty robotic. So if you break above here, after reading what's going on here, you should be fit to go for this long. And this is basically what happened today. Now, if we come into here and we go short, you want to read what's happening here, and you should be fit to go short, right? That's all you're doing. So are you 1 or are you 2, right? Are you predicting, which is completely wrong? You want to plan, plan, react, and execute. So we've already done our planning. So we're inside this key level. That's step number 1. Step number 2 is you're going to react to what the market does. So now from here, we're waiting for a break. So which direction are we going to break in? That's the next question. So we've broken above. We have broken above the 5 minute range, right? So this is what we mean by, this is what the ORB stands for, opening range breakout. You actually need to know who's in control of the price in order for you to catch this. So this is aggressive sellers, aggressive sellers, aggressive sellers, all within the first 5 minutes, 9:33, 4, and 5. So this is where we see this. So we see aggressive sellers, they fail to break below. And because those aggressive sellers fail to break below, we have a break above. So the reason people say, oh, how do you know they're failing? Well, you never know 100% because nothing's 100%. But if you have all these aggressive sellers down here and they fail to break below because they broke above, this is enough confirmation that they failed. So what you're doing is you're reacting to what the market is doing, and you're not trying to predict what you think is going to happen. These are two different schools of thought, right? One's incorrect, one's correct. You don't predict, you react. That simple. Now, you won't get your reaction won't always be correct. I'm not saying you're going to have 100% kind of reaction success rate, but it's sure better than predicting, because with predicting it's like shooting darts with blindfolds. You won't get that far. So aggressive sellers fail to break below, and we see this via break above. And so what does this mean, most importantly, everyone? What does this mean? This means that buyers are passive. They're passive buyers over here. They're passive buy limit orders sitting here at 67, 96, 98. We see this, right? We're reacting to it. We know it. We have proof of this. So if you're struggling to trade orb, this is why, right? This is why people struggle to trade orb. And it's that simple. So you can take a trade from the top of this break, although I personally didn't catch it, and I'll explain why I didn't catch it, right? This was my personal thing. This had nothing to do with the strategy. This was just me. So if we just kind of play this on, what I was looking for was this. I wanted to wait for price to come back into the range, come into this 1 minute fair value gap, give us this. I wanted to see this again. I wanted to see passive buyers stepping in, right? All these aggressive buyers fail to break below the level. Now, when they fail to break below the level, it shows you aggressive sellers have failed, which means that passive buyers are in control. So I missed this, right? Because I wanted to wait for the rejection. I wanted to wait for a re-entry. We didn't get that. Instead, the buyers were so passive and so in control that we just had this, right? This is what we had instead. We had our completed orb setup. So if you're struggling to trade orb, just take a step back and understand, what are you doing, right? This here is the 5 minute orb, and the market told you what it wants to do, right? So you saw a lot of pain in the market, right? Sellers in pain because the aggressive sellers could not break below the zone. Because they couldn't break below the zone, it has to mean that buyers are in control. So if you're an orb trader, take a note of this, everyone. If you're an orb trader, how does the opening range breakout work? Well, it works in 3 simple steps, right? You need to first mark out the range, right? So that you get the 5 minute range. And once you have the 5 minute range, you want to see whether price breaks above or below. But before you do that, you need to see who is aggressive in the range, right? So this is what's important. Who is aggressive? I'll just write AGG. Who is aggressive in the range? And you want to be, so if you break above the range with sellers, it means buyers are in control. So let me just write that in a way that's simple to understand. 5 minute range, who is aggressive? Where is the breakout? Now, a lot of people some people are not patient to wait for number 1, which is, if you can't do step 1, then this strategy is not for you, right? If you're missing step 2, then you're a dartsman who's blind, right? You're shooting darts with blindfolds. And step 3, you need to be patient to wait for the breakout, and you need to wait for an educated breakout. So what do I mean by educated breakout is this. An educated breakout will look something like this. You want to see aggressive sellers failing. Now, just a last thing to finish up on. This was super interesting. We had a big aggressive seller as the market's breaking above the key level, as well as breaking above that 5 minute range over here. This here is further confirmation that the market wants to go long. If we're moving higher with aggressive sellers present, it means that these sellers have not been successful. They've been absorbed by the aggressive buyers. And that is the reason a bullish orb works out.